Welcome back, everyone. This is Classic Homesteading Practices, and today we're going to be talking about worms. Now, for any of you who have decided to click on this and listen to me talk about worms, you're in for one of the best episodes. Reason being is because worms are literally the easiest kept animals. Well, because they're insects. And they don't need a lot of space, but they give you so much. They are the best garbage disposals, and what they give you in return is the most nutritious food, fertilizer, dirt that you can ever want or hope for when it comes to planting a garden. And that is their entire purpose. Their entire purpose, at least for me on my homestead, has been reaping the rewards of a healthy and amazing garden because of worm casting, which is worm poop. And how you get this is literally turning your garbage into food for your worms. Now, of course, there is specifics when it comes to worms eating this food. Usually it's going to be your fruits, vegetables, wood, chips, paper materials. If you're going to do paper materials, though, I highly suggest wetting them and shredding them. But you can do paper materials to a point, and they don't actually eat it sometimes. They will if it's like toilet paper, paper towels. A lot of times people will do wood shavings, and they do eat that. But if you decide or desire to put large things of paper in there, the worms will not eat it. It will actually just compost in the dirt and the worm castings that are made into it, and it just goes into making more dirt. Now, the only thing that I have to say against paper is if there's a lot of ink on it, if there is paint on it, don't do it because it can mess up your soil, it could kill your plants, it could kill your worms. But for things like receipts, paper towels, toilet paper, small things that are related to food items, go for it. But nothing large scale, like painted on cardboard boxes. You can do cardboard. Cardboard is very helpful when making a lettuce-style garden, and it's very nice if you just need a little bit more cush in your worm bin, which we will start talking about right now, because first I should have started with infrastructure. Now, for somebody who wants to have worms, you're going to need to house them. And there are many different ways to do it. And mostly you just need to have a container where they are able to stay in. And this can be a small container, a large container, a bag, a canvas bag usually. I do not suggest doing plastic bags unless it's a very heavy duty one. And still, it's not really the best because over a period of time, it will break. But doing cans, like trash cans, doing the blue Pyrex, what are they called? Mine personally was in a blue tote that we used to stick Christmas, like presents and stuff in before Christmas. And I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. But basically, it's a generic plastic tote bin brand. And as long as it's durable, you can make a house for your worms in it. Because the biggest thing is, you're just housing dirt makers. So, in order to get this started, you're going to need to make some breathing holes. So poke some holes in your desired housing unit. For me, again, it was a plastic blue tote. So I took a drill and punctured holes in it. on the sides and on the top. I also did some on the bottom and then put a half cut blue tote underneath of it. And that was a Foley for me. I should have also put a couple of bricks down because when the juices flow out, the urine and other wet material that comes with having food being eaten, you are going to need it to be dispensed out of the bottom so it's not sitting in the tote and turning into wet muck and festering. So make sure that you poke holes in the bottom. Make sure that you don't have one tote sitting on the top of each other because it will create suction. That was my big mistake. It was very hard to get them unstuck. Actually, I had to dump out all my worms and the dirt in order to get them unstuck because it was so heavy by the time that I had to do it. And make sure that you pick the proper first medium for your worms. Now, I know it would seem easy just to dump the worms in there and give them food and be done with it. But you need a little bit more than that. You need either dirt, coconut coir, wood shavings was how I did it personally, so on and so forth, with some kind of medium that lets the worms wriggle around, eat, and just move the way that they should, which is somewhat like, if not just like, how they would in their natural habitat. Also, the kind of worms that are mostly used for worm farming are called red wrigglers. You find them on Amazon. You can go onto your local Facebook pages for farming, and there is definitely one or two worm farmers who will happily give you a Ziploc bag of red wrigglers. I got mine in a quart-sized bag for $5, and they blew up that blue tote in no time. That's another thing that you have to be concerned about, is that if you give them enough food to propagate, to get bigger, they will. So understand that you're going to be making lots of baby worms by the time that you are done with this project. Because more food going in worm bellies means more babies coming out of worm bellies and eating more food, which is really convenient, especially if you want to be on a large-scale worm farm, which means that you're making lots of compost, you're taking care of lots of scraps, and feeding it to your worms, and overall, you are able to supplement your garden to the point where you never need to buy dirt again, which was where I wanted to be at, which was very awesome considering the composting ability that I had by just cutting grass and giving them leaves from the trees, paper material, fruits, vegetables in my house. Basically, the rule of thumb is if it's food related, don't give them dairy, meat, nightshade plants like tomatoes, and there is one more. What is it? Oh my goodness, how can I not remember? It's another poisonous plant, basically. So no nightshade and no other poisonous things. Oh, if it ferments, don't do it. But that is the wonderful thing about worms, is usually they will eat anything and everything. If you think that it's going to breed E. coli, like with eggs, don't put it in there. That's what it was. No dairy product, meat, eggs, or nightshade plants. Because you can kill your worms with nightshade plants. It's not always going to happen. There are some breeds that are immune to it, but most red wrigglers just stay away from it anyway, and it decomposes in their pits And also the nice thing is when you tear up your gardens, you can again feed that to your worms so they can give you more food. The other nice thing is you can keep worms inside your home and they do not smell. Now, if you are worried about them smelling, I would definitely suggest having a nice thin layer of coconut coir or wood shavings that you put over your food about once a week. I would say that. I personally didn't have to do this. We never had an issue with smell until we were about to leave for our new location. We moved recently. And the only reason that happened was because there was a lot of water going into that tote. And like I was telling you before, it was very hard to unsuction cup the one tote from the other. So it flooded. My worms went overboard and I put them into the rest of my garden beds before I left. But anyway, so when thinking about having worms, make sure to have a designated spot specifically for your worms. Now, worms like cold, dark, damp places. They live underground. So putting them in the garage, personally for us, was a great opportunity. But I did have my worms at the very beginning in a tote in the back room where I did all of my gardening prepping before the season started. Because when we lived up in the north, we had negative 20, 30 degree weather. And having a heated garage was important, but it wasn't always what we had at our disposal. So when you don't have that kind of, privilege or ability, just put it in a shed outside until it gets too cold, and then you can bring it inside. You can put it in your kitchen next to a counter space, and then at the end of doing meal prep or anything, or at the end of dinner, you can take all of your food scraps and just put it in there. That, again, aren't dairy, eggs, protein, and nightshade plants. Which, again, is really convenient because we have a lot of products that we use that don't fall under those criteria. So, yeah. If you have mashed potatoes laying around, throw them in there. If you have any kind of salad bits you didn't want to finish off, if you have any skins or peels, go ahead and throw them in there. And of course, your paper products. If you needed to blow your nose and you didn't want to put it in the trash or you felt like recycling it, just go ahead and put it in with the worms. It'll be fine. So, we've talked about infrastructure and food. We've talked about the kind of worms that they are. We talked about propagation, because worms will eat, and as long as they have enough food, they will reproduce rapidly. And you know that worms are for making worm casting, which is one of the most nutritional ways to put nitrogen and other minerals in your soil. Using worm casting has been a fertilizing technique for a very long time, and it has been a wonderful way for me personally to grow fantastic tomatoes, peppers, any kind of greenery for many, many years. And again, if this sounds like something that you would like to be interested in, just find a place for your worm bin to go. Call one of your friends up who might have it, or go on to Amazon. They have red wrigglers. Ooh, try and say that. And have fun with it. This is going to be a short one today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this information on Introduction to Worms. And I hope you enjoy making fertilizer. Goodbye.